Hey, we're live, everyone. Happy day, whatever day you're listening to. It's still March for me here in the Midwest. Chris is, I think you're in the Midwest. Where do we find you today, Chris? All right, all right. Cool guest today. Chris Mueller, Midwest kid, Schaumburg, Illinois. Got some really cool stories to talk about his journey. He's got some cool products and some really cool things. He's currently playing in the MLS in his hometown, Chicago Fire, which has got to be really cool. That's a really cool situation for you. So current MLS player, played in Europe for a while in Scotland and came back here. So the comeback story is great.
You're listening to Cap Chat, the #1 soccer recruitment podcast in the United States.
This is Cap Chat. So we'll dive in. Chris, thanks for joining us today, man. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, no complaints. Thanks for having me on. Obviously, excited to be on and chat a little bit about my journey and everything that's kind of going on with me and in my life. So yeah, looking to provide some value where I can. But again, appreciate the opportunity just having me on.
Yeah. Well, let's start with kind of your background. I mean, you said you know Schaumburg, Illinois, the Midwest, but kind of talk about your journey. I know you weren't a Rush player, but we'll pretend. I think you're the Shockers is where you're in playing, and but kind of talk about your pathway to as a youth player and how it got you to where you are today.
Yeah, so was a multi-sport athlete like so many kids in the States, playing various sports. I was big in wrestling, basketball, baseball and stuff. And ultimately when the time came when I turned, maybe it was, 10, 11, 12 years old, something in there, I decided to become a one sport athlete and move just to soccer and, try and pursue that a little bit more seriously. As I think my parents saw a little bit of potential in me and wanted to give me a good platform. I was just playing rec soccer at that, not, I mean, travel soccer at the time, just for like the standard city, clubs that come up through like the AYSO and stuff
Yeah.
like nature. So they moved me over to the Soccers when I was like around that age, 10 years old. And yeah, like just developed there through my entire time as a youth player. Had some great coaches, learned some great things. Obviously, was able to get recruited to play in college, which was a really awesome experience. I went to University of Wisconsin. I was a young freshman. I got there at 17 because of my birthday. It was kind of that weird in between where I was like a little bit in front of the cutoff. So I finished at 21 when I got drafted, but played there all 4 years, 3.5 years in school, 4 seasons with the team, and then got drafted to Orlando City in 2018. And then yeah, played there for 4 seasons. Made my debut with the national team. Got brought over from the team from Scotland named Hibernian. Hibs
Mhm.
was the team, and then obviously had the chance to come back and play for my hometown team, which was something I'd always wanted to do as a little kid, and I knew that at some point in my career I was going to try and make that move. So just cool to be able to do that.
Covered a lot of ground there. So let's start. So you're two sport athlete. What was and how old were you when you said you started 100% focused on soccer?
I was probably 10. Yeah.
Was that a tough decision? Like, were you a standout at all sports, or was soccer like you knew you were gonna do soccer, or what was your thought if you remember being 10?
Yeah, no, like I definitely was the best at soccer out of all the ones. Basketball, I didn't have a great shot. I was athletic and quick, so I could get around people, but I didn't really know if I had much of a future when in relation to a lot of the other kids. I loved to wrestle. Wrestle was probably my second favorite just because I loved the
Nice.
individual aspect of that sport where there was no one to blame if stuff didn't go right. It was just like it all there was your output was determined by your input, and it was like just you and the mat, you and one other guy, and it's just wrestling. So there was some component of that I definitely enjoyed, and I actually joined that sport just to get the physical endurance and kind of stretch myself in different ways and grow in different ways. And so that was the reason for that. But I ended up really liking it, and still I think at the end of the day I was just the best at soccer, and I enjoyed that one the most. I had a lot of good friends. That was like another big determining factor, was the friendships that I had started to build at the club. And I was like, I think that soccer is probably the way that I want, just with how I've already developed relationships, how I'll probably continue to develop relationships. And some of the kids that I play youth soccer with are still some of my best friends to this day. So um it was definitely I would say 10 was when we made that transition over to the Soccers and took it a little bit more seriously.
Okay. Just in wrestling, we see a lot of defenders as wrestlers as well, because they just have that mentality that one of our best players I've seen is he's just you got the player that we need to mark out of the game. He's a wrestler. His name's Drake. I'm like, Drake, you're just marking this guy out of the game. Like they just stick to him like glue. It's an unbelievable sport. I have no idea how to wrestle. It's an unbelievable sport to watch. So,
Totally.
so Wisconsin, the Badgers, University of Wisconsin Badgers, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so talk about that journey for you. Um, of how what was that recruitment process look like? It's obviously changed a little bit now, but how did that? What was the recruitment process, and what ultimately made you just settle on becoming a Badger?
Yeah, it's funny, I was actually really adamant about not going to college, when I was doing really well in the academy with the Soccers, and I kept telling my parents I felt like I was very overlooked and underrated as a young player. I saw a lot of kids getting into the ODP teams and the national teams and, stuff like that, they were good players, obviously, but I felt like I could be there as well, and, I always got a little bit of chip on my shoulder for that reason, and I thought that the system was overlooking me, so I was like, "Mom, I'm going overseas. I'm going to Europe. This is my dream. I'll get a trial and, we'll just try and take it from there. I don't need the college game." So that was my idea. And I ended up actually getting a trial. I got some interest from a team in Germany and I went over on a trial 2 weeks and didn't obviously get a contract. And I came back, head in my hands and thinking like, what am I going to do? So I kept grinding and just, trying to find my way in the college game, just acquiring interest from obviously playing at the Soccers. I went to a few showcases and was just trying to build up my name, as much as you obviously can by doing the right things over a long period of time. But yeah, acquired some interest from Wisconsin, and I was really between them and Loyola Chicago, and was going through different, components of that recruitment journey as well, and trying to determine distance from home, and there's all these different parts of the equation, which conference you want to play in, scholarship money, like a lot of things start to um, weigh on you that mean maybe a little bit more than soccer. But ultimately, a Big Ten experience that I thought that I could have while at Wisconsin, as well as the academic, plus the athletic opportunity and potential. Really, that was that University of Wisconsin. I was like, okay, this is definitely gonna be the place for me. I also had a great relationship. At least I felt like from the coach. He had instilled a lot of belief in me, and even though I wasn't on a huge scholarship, I was on a smaller partial scholarship, but I felt like he was honest with me. He felt like he saw potential in me in terms of what I could become. And yeah, it kind of went that way. And I decided to commit and take a run for my money.
So go back. So I have two boys, 15 and 13, and I can't imagine as a parent how was that conversation with your mom to say I want to go overseas. I mean, obviously they seem very supportive from that. I mean, what was that conversation like? Like my mom would have cried. She like if I was like, I'm going overseas. Like how did that conversation go?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that she nor my dad were happy, and my parents weren't together, so I had separate conversations with each of them, but my mom had told me like, "Look, Chris, I'll support you, but we're not going to pay for your way there. Like, we think you need to go to college, so you're going to have to figure it out." So ultimately, I ended up going and, applying at a bunch of different places, looking for a job, at Starbucks, at Home Depot, all these places I was applying at, and I ended up landing a job at Costco in high school, So I was like, okay, I'm gonna start working at Costco. I was on the 4 a.m. to noon shift over summer and ended up making enough money to obviously buy my ticket. So I did that and I went and I actually thought I did really well over there and came back and obviously didn't get the contract, but it was the first kind of taste of reality for me just into the pro game as well, being in the locker room with those guys. But yeah, it was definitely a difficult conversation. I think when I came back and we got to obviously revisit the idea of going to school and trying to actually start to answer some of these emails and really start to hone in on the recruitment process and what that looked like. Obviously, there were steps that I needed to take and things that I needed to do to improve my odds of getting into school in terms of just like academics and things of that nature. But, my parents were ultimately supportive and really influential in terms of helping me decide where I wanted to go to school and helping me understand why it was important. And it's why now today I'm such a big proponent for the college game because I think it just taught me, and we can get into that later, but taught me so much about what it takes to be successful even in the pros.
Well, let's talk about that. So you were a standout 2017, led the entire nation in assists, and so you're the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year. So you had a very successful collegiate career, and obviously got you led to being drafted. So let's stick with the college game right now and talk about what you think the importance of kind of that growth there for you.
Yeah, well, it's easy to pinpoint my senior year just in terms of what I was able to do, but like, we forget to mention my first year, I was barely playing. I didn't score a single goal my freshman year. My sophomore year, I started playing a little bit more. I scored a few goals, but even that year, the team, we had only won like 4 games the whole season. Freshman year was 3. So like we were abysmal. We were the worst team in the Big Ten. And for overnight, after that second year, it was some real adversity that I was going through because, my dreams of becoming a pro were slowly diminishing. I was at a not quote unquote good school in terms of the rankings and get my potential to get drafted was low. I wasn't barely playing, and I remember telling my mom I was actually crying on the phone with her because I was like, I think I need to transfer and go somewhere where I'm going to play more. And, this just isn't working. I've been here for 2 years. The team, the culture is not great. We don't have a winning culture. We're bottom of the Big Ten. And both of my parents had told me, like, separately, you're there, you have a great opportunity. You kind of got to put your hands in the dirt and take on a little bit more responsibility. Like, I can't keep pointing fingers, and you really got to decide if this is something you want to do. And if you do, you got to commit heavier than you ever really have. And so, for me to go from where I was my first 2 years and to go through that adversity and then prove it to myself by becoming the only two-time All-American at University of Wisconsin ever overnight, from that never playing or not playing that much, my sophomore year to that, my junior, senior year, I think that was the most improbable thing maybe ever. If I said
Yeah.
to go on and do that after my sophomore year, people would have said like, "You're crazy," and you would have been right for saying that. It was crazy, but just having pushed through some circumstances like that, and learning to bet on myself, committing myself to the process of growth even more, and like learning my responsibility and my life's outcomes were only on my shoulders. That was the golden token for me. That's what really changed my life. It changed my outcomes on the field. And it was like literally overnight because of that process and because of the confidence I developed on the back end of creating that process. I literally, had the All American year. And then my senior year obviously broke the record for assists. I think there was only one person who got more than 20 assists in the history of NCAA. So that
Yeah.
was, yeah, it was an incredible season. We won the Big Ten, won the Big Ten championship. I still got the rings up here behind me. It was one of the best moments of my career. Even after the time in the pros, just because of how, hard we had worked as a group and turned the culture around. And it was the cherry on top for me. And to me, when you really commit your mind to something and you believe in something, even when nobody else does, if you show up for yourself and you do the right things, like you get rewarded for that. And to have gone from that point and beating Maryland in the semifinal and beating Indiana in the final, you know, there are things that I couldn't have imagined were possible, but it's always a reminder to me that, it sounds cliche, but it's true. Like, you can do what you set your mind to.
Yeah, I love that you talk about kind of your lifestyle change. So you had a flip of the switch, because that is a huge jump, from your sophomore to senior year. Talk about like the physicality differences. You mentioned the mental aspect, but what was your off season like? Like your something a light bulb switched, and you said, "Okay, I'm all in." What was your off season like to come back for because we have a lot of players, I'm sure right now, especially with the landscape, they're not playing like they feel they should be. There's a lot of transfers, and either sounds like you have two options. I'm just like you said, I could do it. I'm going to make the most of it, and you made the most of it. But specifically honing in like the physicality aspect and what you did over like in your off season to come back as a junior.
Yeah, I think ultimately that proponent comes down to like just being willing to take on that responsibility. And, you're going to be done pointing fingers at the coach for not playing you, or that you didn't score because the rain that day, or it was too cold, and whatever the situation might be, you can always point fingers. And to take on that responsibility is also difficult when you're not where you want to be, because that means that you are there because of yourself, but it also empowers you moving forward, knowing that your actions can make a difference in your future. And so my off season that year specifically, even in all years, I was never one to take much time off, but we started to reframe, me and one of my teammates at the time, off season to the separation season, because everyone else was taking time off and maybe they were just doing slight training and whatever, but we, went all out 100%. Like, we were doing, I remember Sean T's Insanity CDs. Like, we were doing them in my friend's basement before we would go and train at the Bridges to Pros in Chicago at Soccer City with Brett Hall and some of these big time pros. It was hours of training. So we'd start at 7 a.m. and do, 45 minutes to an hour of rigorous physical exercise in terms of strength, agility stuff. And then we would get in the car, we would go train and play soccer for, 3 hours with the Bridges to the Pros program. And then sometimes we'd hit the gym after that and go and lift upper body, do core, stretch, do all that sort of stuff, where we really start to build a routine that when we came back that next season, we were so confident because we knew we were doing stuff that only 1% of people were doing. So it's
Yeah.
like, no matter who was across the white lines on the other side of us, we were like, there's no way you're more prepared than us, and there's no way you've worked harder than us. So we're going to beat you guys. And that piece of confidence just came from, again, the willingness to do what nobody else was willing to do.
Man, that's incredible. That's incredible. And it pays off. Like you said, the two-time All-American, being All-American is is a hell of an achievement anyways, but being a two-time All-American is awesome. And then so you get drafted in 2018 as a 6th overall pick, which is, if most people know football, they watch it, to be in the first round is big. Talk us through how excited were you? Were you eyeing? We obviously don't, if you don't want to say you weren't wanting to go to Orlando, but were you eyeing Orlando? Like, what was it like to be picked? What was that moment there for you?
Yeah, my I was lucky in the sense that I had a great agent at the time who was very transparent with me and the idea that, teams could say they're going to draft you at any point. It's like, oh, we're going to take him at 6. We're going to take him at 6. And, the nature of the draft is like the first pick is always the one that's unpredictable and it's uncertain. And it's like it throws a domino effect where everybody else thought, like, oh, that guy is not picked. Maybe now they take him. And the whole draft order just kind of changes. So he was like, look, you got to be prepared to go anywhere. And I was getting interviewed at the combine by 10 plus teams with their GMs and sporting directors. So I was like totally open to seeing where I was going to go. And it's funny, I was sitting there and I'm just like waiting. And I had an idea that I was going to probably go in the top 10. I obviously didn't know, but I was just based on my season and kind of the hype that was going around and all the draft, things that you see going out. And I was like, all right, we'll see. Like maybe I will. So I'm sitting there and just like waiting. My grandparents are there. My parents are there. My brothers, it was a big day over in Philadelphia. It was actually funny. Chicago Fire had the 5th pick, so I was like, man, like, are they gonna take me back home, Are they gonna pick
Yeah.
me? They passed on me, and then 6th came, and it was Orlando City, and honestly, I was excited because Orlando was a fairly new team. They had Kaká on the team,
Mhm.
and they had a massive brand new stadium, massive following, lots of amazing fans, and the culture was just bleeding soccer down in Orlando. So I was like, this is gonna be an amazing opportunity. Obviously, get the good weather and all that. So I was thrilled, just to get going and have the chance to go to over and down. I went almost pretty much straight to my first preseason.
Wow. Yeah, and I mean, you left there. You still, I think you still maybe at the time you're Orlando's all-time appearance mate. You had 126 matches. What's the key to longevity there? Like, how did your mind shift? So you made it, and like it's like every step. I made it, and then there's one more level for it. There's one more level. What was it like? You go to a training camp with grown men, right? And at that time, do they care who you are? I mean, can't you walk in like, hey, look at me, I'm two-time American? They're like, yeah, who cares? Who cares, kiddo? What
Yeah,
was that like?
nobody has any idea what the Big Ten is. Like American guys do, but I mean, there's probably 75%, international guys who are from France, from the guys, there was a guy from Peru who's playing in the World Cup and guys from Colombia, and they have no idea where you're coming from. They have no idea who you are. And you're going from being a big fish in a small pond, which is still no small feat, obviously, right? Like becoming in the top 10 of the players in the country in college. But, then you step into being a tiny fish in a massive pond, where I'm playing
Yeah,
with Sasha Kljestan, who led the MLS in assists the last 2 seasons, and Dom Dwyer, who was banging goals for years before that. And they just spent $4 million on another winger from Paraguay. So, like, it's a much different level, and the level was obviously better, and it took some adopting for me. But ultimately, it was always about just trying to stay ready and like maximize my opportunities, try and maintain the confidence that I was building in, as a college player, and try and just build on that. And I got a good opportunity in preseason. One of the guys got injured, and I got to step in and play up top. And I think I scored 5 goals in my 6 preseason games with Orlando, and earned the start for the first game, and was kind of always that for the first year. I was kind of always that in between a starter and in between the sixth man, the first guy off the bench. And that was amazing for me just to get reps under my belt. I think that my tenacity and I play with my heart on my sleeve a lot. I'm a very emotional player and I want to win. And I think the fans resonated with that. The fact that I was an American kid that, came from the draft. It's hard for the kids in the stands to relate to players who are from different countries who don't
mhm,
walk that same route. So I think, by nature and just I became kind of a fan favorite down there, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. And, I was just maximizing on my chances and just showing, I guess, like a really nice willingness to win that maybe they hadn't seen a lot of that, like real passion for trying to win yet. Maybe, I don't know what it was exactly, but from there kind of just like sprouted my career and gave me like a lot of chances to continue to step onto the field, to keep making a name for myself. And then obviously as you stay prepared, you got to take those moments as well, right? I was scoring some goals, I was getting assists, and being, like I said, a guy from college, they don't expect massive production from those guys right away. So the fact that I was producing,
mhm.
run up for rookie of the year that first year, um, and yeah, it obviously gave me a good foundation to continue to build my career on.
Wow. And just to think 3 years earlier, you're barely kind of get you're fighting for minutes, and then
Wisconsin.
coming in, and that's incredible. That's incredible. So, what was the move to Europe though? To Scott, like, what was that? Um, how involved are you in this process of moving? Was this you requested, or kind of explain that to? I guess I don't really know how that fully happens of going
Yeah.
on loan or what that looks like.
Yeah, so I was on a 4-year contract with Orlando. It was a 1+1+1+1, like all options on the club's end. So
Okay.
not a lot of power for the player there, but if you do well, they obviously pick it up. And I was on a rookie contract, so it wasn't like it was massive for them to pick up given what I was doing on the field. And that third season, I had double digit goals, a lot of assists, and was one of the best wingers in the league statistically at that time. And got called into the US national team, scored 2 goals on my debut. So like I was in a really good
Oh,
moment
wow.
in my career where like I knew I was coming up on a contract year and hopefully I could either get a new contract with Orlando or, my dream had always been to play in Europe as a little kid, to be honest, and just playing the different types of environments, and I got in some trouble when I was in Orlando for saying that when I signed with Hibs, like I'm so excited to go and play in front of fans who just like live and breathe the game, and a
Yeah.
lot of them took that personally, but it's just true, I don't think we can argue when you go step into an Edinburgh derby and it's Hibs versus Hearts or you watch Celtic and Rangers, like the fans it is a different atmosphere to play in. And I can tell you that just from my own experience. So like I was excited about that opportunity, but nonetheless, like I was very involved in the process. So Orlando was coming back and saying they wanted to resign me. They weren't necessarily giving me a great offer that I felt like was worthy of what I was producing on the field, especially granted the reputation I'd built up with the fans and how I was within the club. So, I was like, it's fine. I'm just gonna, ride out my contract and probably I'm gonna look to go to Europe, So me and my agent were looking around. I had a bunch of teams from, one in the Bundesliga, a lower team who was probably gonna be fighting relegation, and I didn't know if I wanted that. So then I was looking at a couple teams in the Netherlands, and then Hibs came on the board. And more than anything else, I wanted to be involved with the team that I felt like wanted me as well. That was important. I was like, I want to go somewhere where like they they want me to be there. They have big plans for me there, and it's a good fit. I'm going to get some good time, and I can obviously make another move after that if that opportunity comes. Um, and when Hibbs came around and they were showing massive interest in me, the coach was a big fan and really wanted me over there to help the team continue to push because they were third place in Scotland, pushing for Champions League. I was like, yeah, this is going to be the right move. So I was trying to get Orlando to sell me, and I was going essentially every day to the GM's office, knocking on the door, like, please, just sell
Yeah.
me, let me go. And they were like, no, it doesn't make sense for us business wise to sell you right now. Like, we're going to keep you. And so I signed a pre-contract with Lips to go in like 6 months after my contract was about to run out. And, that was probably one of the hardest spells of my career because I wanted to go somewhere and I couldn't do what I wanted to do, like just completely being held hostage essentially. And it wasn't hostage, right? I'm still playing for Orlando and it was great, but I was ready to move on and ready to go. And I think it was the right time. They were offering a lot of money for me. So I thought that it would have been great to get out there at that time. But yeah, I mean, I was really involved. I was calling the GM constantly, talking to the coach after training and just trying to get moved, and obviously it didn't happen at that point. And I had to wait 6 months until I could actually go over to Scotland and join the team. So yeah, difficult spell, especially considering I waited the 6 months and the day I landed in Scotland, I went to go and take my picture with the manager with my jersey. And it was like a big moment because the fans had all been waiting 6 months for me to get there. So it was like a lot of hype. They had a lot of opportunity to market and build it up.
Yeah, that's cool.
I landed there and they fired the coach. They lost a game that night and they sacked the coach who signed me. So I was like, oh my God, like just, of course, just wild experience. And so I moved all the way across the world with my wife and moved all my stuff. And then it's like the coach who signs me gets fired. I was like, oh man, what's this going to bring? So it was a amazing experience. But yeah, I was pretty heavily involved in that whole.
The ultimate college soccer recruitment roadmap. A step-by-step guide to the recruitment process, strategic recruitment planning. Take every month, every year, a step-by-step guide through the recruitment process. You can purchase the book at rushcollege.com/book. That is rushcollege.com/book. This will be the most helpful book you have read for the recruitment process. It is a must read if you want to play collegiate soccer. And you can find the book at rushcollege.com/book. Purchase now today for your exclusive copy.
Process.
Well, and there's a lot of things I want to get back to a couple of things. I want to stay here for a moment. And it's crazy for when you talk about like asking someone to sell you. Like that's insane to me. Like you wanted to go and you're powerless at that point. And you have to still continue to perform. I guess you don't have to. You could boycott it, but like you gotta still go out and play knowing that. And yeah, that talk a little more about the emotional toll there of did you feel completely powerless?
Yeah, it was brutal. It was really hard, you know, because I felt like I had done the club really well given what they were paying me and like my output. Like that's just clearly what it was. And just like how I had put my all in for the club. And I think it would have just been a great time to get rid of me and let me move on, considering they had said they wanted to sign me, but they weren't giving me like a fair offer. So it was like, it's getting kind of weird. And then, you know, to be there for those 6 months was really hard for me. You know, I'm like training and, you know, some people are saying like, just stop coming and start to, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
then that's your character. And I don't want to build that reputation either. So you got to continue to do what's right, you know, even though it's hard and I don't want to like let my teammates down. But ultimately, like it was set up to be like an amazing move for me, you know? So it was a massive challenge. Like it was a massive emotional toll. My wife saw it. I was distraught, you know, for a lot of it. And I was young as well, emotional and, you know, probably a little bit more reactive than I am now. And just because you want these things in your career to
Mhm.
go that you want them to go. But in that sense, you know, you are an asset in a lot of ways. You know, that's one of the components of the industry of professional soccer that, you know, people overlook. They think it's a lot of diamonds and they don't realize that a lot of times there's a cost that comes with that.
Yeah, and we'll dive into that too because I know you've talked about the less glamorous side, of the reality. So you get there, and what an emotional roller coaster. Now you're there, fan meet, like everything. You take the picture, fans are waiting for you. Your manager now gets sacked. What was the reality there? You're American Europe. Again, you had a good time. You had a good career in Orlando. Now you're back here. Do your teammates care? Now you're starting over again, right? Are they? You're just another player to them now, right?
Yes, yeah, they also knew that the club had done a lot to bring me in, and I was,
Okay.
like, meant to be what I was told I was gonna be given the number 10 kit the next season, so, like, that just says something in and of itself.
Yeah. Oh,
They knew
yeah.
I was there to, you know, play an important role, and, yeah, like I said, the club had just done a lot to bring me and I think pulled a lot of resources to make it happen, so, like, I was grateful for that, and I knew that the opportunity, which should still be there, granted that, but then, you know, they hired a new coach who for some reason, it felt like he had something against American kids. He was a Scottish guy, and he brought a couple kids on loan from Celtic, who played my position, and it was like I was in and out of the team. I feel like he felt like he had to play me, but he didn't want to play me. And then I'm starting to get upset. I'm talking to the owner. I'm like, dude, you brought me all the way here, and I'm not playing like this. You know, I was playing in some games. The team was also struggling a lot. Like we went through a tough spell after they sacked Jack Ross, and you know, I think that because of the nature of who I was on the team, all the fans were blaming me, you know? So, like, I was on
Ugh.
you know, I couldn't if a team lost, I couldn't leave my house, you know, if the team didn't play well on Instagram and stuff, I was getting killed. So it's a different beast to play over there, you know, especially
Pause there for a second. You couldn't leave your house. Explain this to my simple mind Midwest mind here. Like you couldn't leave your house because you fear for your safety?
not for my safety, but like, you know, I remember there was one game we played at home against Celtic at like noon, right? So the game was at 12. We played Celtic at home. I started in the game and played 90 minutes, and I played fairly well. The team we lost 1-0, and I remember my dad was at the game. He flew in from Las Vegas, right? So he's living in Las Vegas. He flies to London on like a 12-hour flight and then takes the train up to Edinburgh. So like he crosses the world to come and see me play, to see the city of Edinburgh. Like it's an amazing city. So I was like, you know what? The game's over. I'm gonna take you out to dinner. Like, well, I'll show you a little bit around downtown and stuff. And we went to dinner, and I was getting heckled at dinner. You know,
Ugh.
so it was like he was like, let's just go back, man. You know, this isn't even worth it. And so it's just like things like that. I guess, you know, it's not like your safety is in trouble, but you're just getting a bunch of stick by everyone in the city knows you. You know, I landed there the day I landed there in in Edinburgh. I walked in the city center with my wife, and I got noticed like 15 times taking pictures with people. You know, it was way different than if you walk in, you know, downtown Chicago or something. And even there or like in coffee shops, when I do get noticed here, it's like people will come and just ask for a photo, and it's like
Yeah.
they're nice. It's not like they're all over you if you don't win on the weekend against Philly. It's a much different feeling. So, you know, from that standpoint, I would say I wouldn't leave my house if I lost just because I wasn't trying to take stick from anybody.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So how much different is the game there? And That's interesting you brought up. I want to pause. Like you felt, and I know you've said this in other interviews, is you felt the stigma, like they look. Do you feel they look down upon you or look down upon us as Americans? Like you're not as good as us. You're the style of play, because this was back in. I mean, that's 4 years ago, but um, it was. I mean, it was that. You think that had a lot to do with it? They think less of you as a player. Maybe the manager did less of you as a player because we're American.
I think they don't think we know as much about the game because we're Americans, you know,
Yeah,
especially when things aren't going well. It's just like an easy scapegoat. You know what I mean? Like if things are
yeah.
going great,
Silly
maybe they're
American.
cool with it, you know, but like definitely when things aren't going well, like you have that component of just it is what it is. You know, you're an American guy over there and they definitely have that stigma.
Wow. And then I know you kind of glazed past in 2022 or 2020, excuse me, your debut with the men's national team, and you scored 2 goals and an assist, and you just kind of breezed over that. So like that's a big deal. That's a big deal. Did you dream of playing for the? Because I know you talked about dreaming of playing in Europe and playing pro. Was the national team like a goal you always wanted, or I think every kid maybe dreams of it, but was that something um, that you're fighting for, is kind of unexpected, or I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, but I mean, by no means was it expected. And I guess I did just glaze over that briefly, but
Yeah.
you know,
No, no big deal. I scored 2 goals for the national team on my opening debut, but hey, no, next.
I was, yeah, I would say I definitely had I wouldn't say I totally had dreamt about it, like, but while I was growing up, I saw so many kids in the youth national teams and that I wasn't getting called, and I kinda had felt like the national team wasn't gonna be for me when I was younger, like because they had just preferred players who were different than me, and, you know, I almost came to just, like, use that as a chip on my shoulder, like, "Tho I'm
Yeah.
gonna show that I'm better than those national team kids every time," you know, and a lot of those kids got youth national team debuts, but they never had made it to the full men's team, you know, so for me to be able to have done that and you know, I remember standing in my hotel room when I was called in, and then like I was in the we had the training camp in January, and I found out that I was going to start in the game, and I was like, I was in my tracksuit in the hotel in Miami, and I just had my headphones on, and I was just thinking, I was literally sitting there like for 20 minutes before the bus left for the game, and I was like, I can't believe my life right now, like I can't believe I'm here at this point and about to go put on the U.S. men's national team jersey, and you know, I think it's only something that maybe less than 1,200 people have ever done in the history of US soccer, you know? So, like, just to be able to have that moment and, you know, my dad was in the crowd and my
Oh, how cool.
girlfriend, who was my wife now, obviously, but, you know, it was a really special day, and I think that it was kind of just like the cherry on top for everything that I'd done and worked for to be able to represent your country no matter what level it's on, to have gotten myself in that pool finally after all the years of getting turned away from the U12, U13, U14, U15, U16 national teams, you know, all the way up the totem pole to that point, and then obviously having that moment to score 2 goals in the debut, like and just cap it off was like, yeah, I don't think I slept that night. Let's put it that way.
Oh man, that's incredible. Yeah, that's so cool. If you just joined us, we're talking to Chris Mueller, currently playing for the Chicago Fire in MLS. We haven't yet even got to his what he does in the his website, b2btheofficial.com. He wrote a book talking about his journey, pathway to pro. So we are getting there, I promise everyone. But keep getting sidetracked by some of his stories. So if you don't mind, I want to ask. I want to get to the couple things that your heart condition. I know that, and that changed things for your B2B, the official, your book. If you don't mind, you have kids, or what? You married for? Did I read you have 2 to 3 kids, or am I dreaming that?
No, I got 2 kids, 1-year-old and 2.5 currently.
Wow, that's crazy. How's that? Oh, I remember those ages. How's that going? Is that neat for it? Is that it changes your whole mindset, doesn't it, when you have kids?
Absolutely, yeah, perspective totally different. It's the first time in my life I've ever, you know, moved down the totem pole of importance, you know, it's like my career is supposed to be number 1, and it's like, I got something higher up the hierarchy now, you know, so
Yeah.
no, it's been amazing. It's something that makes you realize that life is so much bigger than soccer as well. So, you know, I've thoroughly enjoyed being a dad and I've just kind of taken on that role. It's been amazing. You know, I can't even put words to it.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously, I mean, I grew up around the game. I did not a pro player, but I had 2 boys, and I was the first question, like, "Do you hope they play soccer?" And, I think that the political answer was like, "Well, I'm just happy if they're healthy," but to be honest with you, both my boys play, but I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you, I want them to play soccer." Do you feel that? Do you there's gotta be some, like, I want them to play, like, "You're good, they should be good," like, Is there some of that in you, or have you got to that stage yet?
Yeah, no, like, no, I think that playing sports will be good for them, like, regardless of what that is,
Yeah.
that is, I think that they might be inclined to play soccer just because their dad did.
Yeah.
I don't I would say right now I'm indifferent about it. Maybe as they get a little older, I'll feel different, but,
Yeah.
well, as of right now, I'm pretty happy just to be around them and obviously wanna see them just, like, have fun and enjoy
Yeah.
whatever they're doing, so we'll see where that brings us.
That's cool, but it does certainly make a bad game, bad night on the pitch, or fans unhappy to go home, and everything just melts away, man. There's nothing like it. Good for you. I'll switch gears here a little bit. I practice pronouncing it. I'm still going to screw it up. I'm gonna let you. I can explain what it is. You have inflammation around your heart. That and let's talk about that. I'll let you pronounce what diagnosis was and kind of talk about that.
Yeah, it's called pericarditis. This was last year in preseason, right? Like a big year for me, just in general, coming off of a pretty poor for the whole fire, and self individually, I came off of a hip surgery 2023. Wasn't my best in 2024, nor like I said, was the team. It was just a difficult season for everyone's. Once they announced that they had hired Greg, and I had the relationship with him in the national team, he had brought me in, gave me my debut, so I was excited to be able to work with him and the club was really taking an exciting direction. So I had gone super hard that off season, went out to San Diego and did some personal training to work on my first step and getting that explosiveness back. Put in a ton of time with it, and then preseason came around. I really felt like I could like refurbish myself and give myself another. It was the time to see an uptick in my career, and then yeah, I woke up in the middle of the night while we were away at preseason in Florida with really bad chest pain, and like was scared, didn't know what it was, knew it wasn't. I had had acid reflux and stuff before, but didn't really think that it was correlated and called the trainers and, long story short, get brought to the ER later that morning. Or I actually went to an urgent care first, and the doctor brought me in and listened to me on the stethoscope, and I'm 28, 29 years old, right? I didn't think that there's anything like super severe wrong, but I'm obviously scared because they're taking me to the urgent care. I'm in a ton of pain, like a lot of pain. My wife's at home pregnant with my second kid,
Oh,
she's in the third trimester, so she can't fly down. And so like I'm in the urgent care, and the doctor is like listening to my heart, and he's like, I don't want to freak you out, but like I hear a pericardial rub and I think you need to go to the emergency room. So I was like, what are you telling me right now? Like what I don't even care if I play soccer again, but at least let me get back home to see my kids. You know what I mean? I go to the ER, and they run a bunch of tests. They get me on some painkillers to help me like obviously tolerate the pain that I was in. And then I ultimately get diagnosed with that thing called pericarditis, which is like an inflammation of the pericardium, which is the sac that the heart sits in. And so I was trying to come back multiple times last season and just kept having these like recurrent flares, they call them, where maybe I was playing too quickly and the friction from the heart rate to the on the pericardium causes like a reflare. And so like that happened multiple times until finally they put me on the IR, and I had to take off 3 full months of no activity at all.
oh
So
my goodness.
uh, it was a really long time, being someone who was so accustomed to routine and someone who had craved rhythm in my life and, physical activity. I became habituated in my life. So that was a massive shock and just a massive adversity. I was on a contract year, so I didn't know if I was going to play the next season and if the Fire was going to resign me, like what was going to happen with my life, and it was just like all up in the air. So tons of anxiety, tons of fears and concerns being a dad, having two kids,
Yeah.
thinking about insurance for the next year, like all this stuff crosses your mind. And so, yeah, battling that obviously last year was no joke. Definitely the hardest thing that I've ever been through in my life, and also opened my mind to the fact that life is so much more, about things that aren't just the game of soccer. It is just a game at the end of the day, and you realize that when your health is on the line, and it didn't end up becoming anything that was life threatening by any means, but at the same time, I'd been in the ER overnight, and I had 10 doctors rushing in and flicking on the lights and checking me, and because my heart rate got too low when I was sleeping. So that, I mean, that which was just normal for me, like 40, 42 for when I'm sleeping is what it usually is. So like, but they didn't know that, and just to be woken up and scared, and they're like almost acting like I was dying, and like it's just they were traumatic moments, obviously, that will stick with me, and it just makes me remember too that your health is everything. So new perspective. I know that was a long wind story about it, but
No, no. It's part of your story now. I think that's the thing. Like I've never been anything through that traumatic, obviously. But it seems like it's like every step of your journey, there's just like some kind of setback a little bit, and some more another reason to another chip on your shoulder, and like you just keep building. And I mean, that's just part of your journey now, and so coming back 3 months without it, and I mean, anyone who's listening, if you play, I mean, you play the game, you take 2 weeks off, you're a totally different player. Like, you lose some of that game fitness. So when were you cleared when was your like, when were you cleared to come back and, like, you can go run again now? Or when were you cleared to for physical activity, and how did that feel? Like, I mean.
Yeah, so, like, I had been after the initial flare, I started working out probably within a week. They
Okay.
tested PRP, which is the inflammatory marker in your blood, and it had regulated. But typically, the textbook says, like, if you have a flare of pericarditis, you need to take 3 months of absolute zero activity. But since I was a pro athlete and they were trying to, like, kinda get me back with the doctors, they had decided, "Let's try it. Your CRP is normal and, just start slow, and obviously we'll see where you can get." But probably a month after that, I had another flare, and so, like, the same pain came back for a few days. I had to get back on ibuprofen to knock down that inflammation, and then I took even longer off, not 3 months, but it was, like, maybe 4 weeks of absolutely no activity. So then I get my hopes back up again, I start training again, get my heart rate back up, and same thing happened, in the middle of the summer. That was probably May or June. I don't remember which exact month, but then from there, I started working with a different cardiologist as well downtown in the city, more of a specialist in Chicago. And he had told me, like, "Look, you need to take the 3 months off completely, and then we'll slowly figure out an RTP plan, a return to play plan from there." So I was directed to sit out. The club put me on the injury reserve list for the season. And then obviously they still believed in me and knew that I could help the team in some stands. And so they did re-sign me for this year, obviously at different terms. But all things considered, like, obviously grateful for the opportunity just to be able to have the chance to come back and prove myself again. And yeah, it was a long ramp back up, but May was the last flare, and then obviously after the 3 months, in September, October, I started picking up before preseason.
Awesome. And so far, I mean, you've started, you get minutes back. I mean, essentially, you're starting. I want to say completely ground zero because I mean, you're still a professional athlete, but you're starting from scratch again. And good for Chicago, your hometown, your club to still believe in you. And so you're slowly getting minutes back out there, and building back into the starting lineup. But I would imagine your goal is to be in the starting lineup by the end of the year, and you're slowly getting there. So how's the comeback going for you? I guess mentally and physically.
Yeah, no, like, mentally, I think I have a different perspective, right? It's like I'm just grateful to be out here, like, even start or not start, it's like I'm just playing professional. I didn't realize how hard it was until I stopped completely, and then I came back in preseason and was just like my body was in shock because I hadn't done those movements in
Yeah.
so long at that intensity for that duration. So it was definitely a shock to the body, but, like, I had a really strong preseason. I scored a bunch of goals in Coachella and had a couple assists. Like, I think I had the most goal contributions while we were there. So, like,
That's
having
awesome.
taken a year off and then still being as sharp as I was, I felt really confident about that. It gave me a lot of momentum moving into the season. And then, I came off the bench in the first game, didn't play the second game, started the third game in Columbus for the first time in like a year and a half. I started, which was awesome. It was their home opener. It was a great atmosphere. And unfortunately, in that game, I hurt my adductor a little bit. So I've been out since then. It's only been one game, but yeah, I'm definitely moving in that direction. I think more than anything, I just want to be able to contribute what I can where the coaches feel like they can use me. My role is, obviously different in by some definition this year, just granted everything that I've been through last year. So, just slowly building myself back up and trying to gain that confidence and trust again in the coaching staff and my teammates and stuff. It's obviously been a while for me, but I think a lot of people are pleased with how I've come back. And, I'm obviously just trying to build on that momentum and see where it takes me.
Well, I would. It's. I can sit and talk to you for. There's things I didn't even get a chance to talk to. You've talked on different interviews and podcasts, about the inverted winger traditional, and I can do that for hours. But I do want to get to. I guess one of the big reasons is you have Be the Best, which is a high performance mentorship platform. You wrote a book about that. Could you talk a little bit about, and we'll put the website up here as well. It's be the best of the official.com. Talk a little bit about that, and what's kind of brought you to this journey and what you guys do.
Yeah, so B2B was the brand that I started while I was in Orlando, and it's the entity that I wrote my book under. And obviously now, and now, granted, all the extra time that I had last year and trying to think about what I wanted to instill in the game, just from all the people that I could obviously touch and reach, given my platform and the social proof that I have in this field. I wanted to create like an online course that can touch on a part of the market that I felt like was lacking a little bit. I feel like a lot of players are and young adults more generally even speaking, are lacking direction and, have a lot of anxiety given all the potential options of things that they could be doing for their lives. They don't know what to do that will actually increase their odds of success in the future. And, like I said, I switched my mindset in my sophomore year of college, going into my junior year. My life had changed forever as a result of, instilling new habits. And you could see behind me, I'm a big reader, so the book was a big component for me that I wanted to get out. And these sorts of habits that kids I don't necessarily know are aware of these systems that they could implement that could really drastically change the direction of their lives. If they just choose to do a few things differently and start to be consistent and committed to those habits, it's like how they'll build confidence in themselves and how they'll obviously increase the likelihood that they'll live a life that they're proud of, and much farther beyond the game of soccer. It's about life, because I feel like even me, for example, facing this heart condition, I think I tolerated the adversity better because of how many times in my life I've proven that I am who I say I am. I
Yeah.
know I can show up for myself. I know I can push through difficult things because I've been through 'em my whole life. And, I've showed up for myself when no one was there when I did the running. I didn't cut corners. I didn't, cheat myself in any way. So, like, when you face these sort of adversities in life, the same adversities that you face on the field, that stuff will translate. So, that's why I truly inherently believe that it is about a lot more than soccer. It's about helping kids understand what they're up against, because I think a lot of kids right now are under the interpretation that maybe they're further ahead than maybe they are, or they're better than they are, and they don't understand, like, this is a huge mountain that you're looking to climb if you even want to play D1 and D2 sports. It's like 1.5% of kids who actually get to that level. So
Yeah.
you talk about wanting to get into the 1.5%. You have to have the blueprint to do what 99% of people aren't doing, and the things that are actually going to help you move the needle. So, like, just again, given my experience and everything that I'd done in my career, I look back at like the 14, 15, 16-year-old version of myself who knew I had to do more, who knew I had to go in the gym and lift weights when, nobody else was. I didn't know what to do in the gym. I didn't know what I should be eating. I didn't know what perspective I should have and how I should really be focused on training and what type of habits I should be instilling off the field to help me get to where I wanted to go. So I start reading tons of books. I've spent, I was in the locker room with Nani, who lived in the house with Cristiano Ronaldo for 3 years in
Oh,
Manchester, and I'm asking him everything about his routines and his diet and, what does he do when he goes home. And so I've taken just like all this time to learn so much, and now I obviously have my own routines that I follow to make sure that I'm fit to play in the games, to make sure that I'm confident in myself and ready to take care of my opportunities. Like, all of these things, this like overall developmental blueprint for young players to not only help them succeed on the soccer field, but also to help them succeed in life, because obviously that's the most important thing. And I think that's what parents are looking for as well. I look at my kids, and you want to develop strong and confident and
yeah.
competent people, more than you want your kid to be a D1 athlete. You want to make sure that they know who they are, that they're confident in their abilities to go through things and know that they'll be able to be there for themselves, to really understand who they are, to know what they bring to the table, to be able to negotiate for themselves when, they're looking for a job or whatever that is. It's like, I truly think being the best soccer player that you can be right now and trying to like follow that journey diligently, it's going to age your life, because the success principles are iterable across, whether it's soccer, whether it's business, whether it's you want to be a lawyer, a doctor, whatever that looks like. It's all the same stuff, like, at least I truly believe that. I know a lot of people who are successful in just my life that I've spoken to and gotten mentored by believe that. And so, again, it's just about instilling and trying to provide that blueprint for kids, because I felt like I saw a need for it. And obviously, you can tell I could talk about it all day. I'm super passionate about,
Yeah.
getting that message out and just ultimately giving direction to young players who feel maybe directionless.
And I think funny thing, one, I'm super impressed by the books. I'm gonna be honest with you. I thought that was a virtual background. Um, and
Excellent.
and and so I think that's awesome. I think the two huge key takeaways there is that you're constantly learning. I'm very impressed by that. You're constantly learning, constantly picking people's brain, constantly trying to make yourself a better human. And two, man, the adversity, it's so much easier just to give up. Like, I hate to say that. That's obviously not the advice, but that's so much easier to give up. It's hard. Like,
Yeah.
you did the hard stuff. It's easy to go, "Eh, I didn't make it," or this, or I'm not starting my sophomore year. That's the easy path. And it's like, what's the bird that reinvents itself? Is that a phoenix? Yeah, like, you've reinvented yourself, and like I said, that chip on your shoulder keeps going. That is incredibly impressive by your journey and your tenacity to go and just keep grinding, man. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I try and instill in the kids in my course, and the kids that I work with is that,
Yeah.
first and foremost, curiosity, like you said, like constantly trying to learn. I couldn't say that my life is and the results that I've experienced in my life is a compilation of anything other than my desire and to learn and to look at people who had what I wanted and follow the same routines that they did. So it was like I was a young kid, a young boy who wanted to be successful, to make money, to be different, to stand out. Like those are all things that I think young males specifically, and maybe females do as well, but I can only relate to the young men. But like, it's like you want to be different. You want to stand
Yeah.
out. You want to be cool in front of your friends. You want to be respected. I wanted to be able to say I committed to Wisconsin and that differentiates me in front of my friends, like that. Those are feelings that I think are normal. And then it's like, I read the quote when I'm in college that, you read 7 books a year and you increase your likelihood of being a millionaire by 122%. And I'm like, oh, for sure, I'm doing that then too. So I'm like, I'm just picking up whatever the people who are successful and have what I want, and they tell me what I need to do, I'll do it. And it's
Yeah.
it's nothing more than that. But like you said too, it is a choice. You face these adverse situations in your life, and you can either choose to aim up and still bring your best, and obviously continue to push through and be persistent, or you become bitter and resentful at the fact that you haven't had what you want, and ultimately you're not going to get anywhere. And that's the part that saddens me most is that kids and people have so much more potential and capability to handle these things and to take on responsibility for themselves, and ultimately the kids need to understand that like their life is going to be a direct result of the inputs that they have. It's nothing, nobody's coming to save them. No one's going to come and dig you out of the hole that you find yourself in, whether that's in your career, whether that's in whatever situation, it is on you, like no one's going to fight for your dreams more than you do. And if you don't understand that, like ultimately at the end of the day, like you're not going to lead the life that you want. You're not going to feel proud of that. And that's a hard pill to swallow. So it's like, yes, it's hard to follow that journey towards the best version of yourself, but it's also hard to live with the idea that you have potential that's being wasted. So I'm really trying to drive that fact home into kids and to get them to understand that again, it's about more than soccer in my program and give them the tactical blueprint, but at the same time, teaching them how they can differentiate themselves on the field as well.
I love it. And then also you donate, you give money back. You have a legacy foundation as well. What is that? Where's that go to? Talk a little bit about that too, because you're making this
Yeah, so
awesome. You're
100% of
giving
the
back.
100% of the proceeds of my book have gone to literacy. This
Nice.
summer, we're hosting an event in Chicago with the UIC Center for Literacy, and it's a massive book giveaway and literacy event we're hosting for adults in the city, just to use the funds to help people understand the power of reading. Again, because it's all about awareness and what if you could be doing things better. I don't anything that I've learned in my life, whether that's about habits, health, finances, whatever it is, I've read from somebody who's had what I wanted, and I just try to instill the same routines. And I feel like people don't understand the power of reading and how much information is out there. And I figured, if people don't know how to read, that's the biggest disadvantage of them all. Like the
Yeah.
opportunities are always there, but if you don't know how to read, you're up against it, at least in my opinion. So like that was why I wanted to donate all the proceeds of the book to literacy or any causes for literacy. And that's gone to various places. This a specific, I guess, bunch of resources is going to go towards this event. And then, we'll continue to partner with different people as we move forward in the future and look for more ways to support literacy just amongst adults and children around.
That's incredible. And if people want, I'm assuming they can donate. Can people donate to your cause as well? I mean, obviously the book helps and people donate. What's driving people to your website?
Yeah, the only mode of like real donation right now is just from purchasing the book. I take literally $0. So it all goes to the book, and I haven't like opened it up for outside donation. Maybe I will eventually in the future and figure that out, but I probably should. But as of right now, it's just been through, the purchasing of the book. Buy it, give it to your friend, give it to your kid, your friend's kid, you know, uh, that's the best way I would say you can do that.
Well, that's fantastic. No, that's really cool. The book is called "Bet on Yourself: Um, How to Build Unshakable Confidence, Tune Out the Noise, and Rise to the Occasion." Which is, boy, when you put it in a sentence, seems so simple, doesn't it? But my goodness, you've been through. I've taken an hour of your time, so I incredibly appreciate it. I tell you, that's you talk about the reading and things like that, and if I have to imagine that as a parent, your parent is your dad still with us? He's still alive? Your parents? Yeah, I would. I bet everything you've done off the field is what they're probably the most proud of. Like, I know it's man, I see my kid play in the national team, but you've done a lot with the obstacles and the adversity you've overcome. But I think your kids are lucky to have you as a dad. take away half of what you've done, they're going to be incredible human beings, Chris. So I mean that sincerely. You've done a lot, and it's been an absolute joy to talk. I could talk to you for 5 more hours. So really, really cool. So guys, check out be2betheofficial.com. You can buy Chris Mueller's book, Bet on Yourself. And also the Be the Best high performance mentorship program. All the proceeds of the book goes to literacy, which is just incredible. So Chris, any final words of advice?
Yeah, no, just obviously you could find more of me at b2btheofficial.com. I'm on Instagram. We have an Instagram handle for that as well. And obviously just launched this year the Path to Pro program. That's not only the path to the professionals, but like everything else I've mentioned on this podcast, it's about all things just personal development for young players and helping them achieve what they want, not only in their careers, but in their life. So you could also find that on the website. That started up. There's a mentorship component involved as well if kids want to join that tier and get mentored by me personally throughout the duration of the course. But, it's an 8-module course that's, lifetime access to, and again, just I think it's a tremendous resource and a value that a lot of kids can benefit from. And obviously I'm passionate about it, as everyone can hear. So nonetheless, I do appreciate your time. I thank you for the opportunity. It's been fun, and yeah, here for anything else, but we can stay in touch.
All right, well, I appreciate it. Good luck this season with your rehab. I love those kids of yours, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, everyone.